Hi and welcome to this Big Picture webinar. My name is Mark and I will be hosting it. Before we start, I would like to talk a little about our products that are available on Atlassian's marketplace, Software Plans product, and also mention our wiki, softwareplan.com pages, where you'll find extensive documentation covering all the available features. Now, BigPicture is our Software Plan's flagship product. However, there are other available on the marketplace, including an extension to BigPicture. And BigPicture in general is a project portfolio management suite for Jira, so Jira Cloud, Jira Server, as well as Jira Data Center. As I said, there is an extension to BigPicture for large-scale organization, which we call BigPicture Enterprise, but also we offer a standalone plugin, standalone app called Gantt, which is limited to the still most advanced module Gantt of BigPicture, but also the program manager. Gantt also includes a resources panel, so it's kind of a two modules combined, you could say. Additionally, we also offer BigTemplate, which main functionality is to export issue detailed information into previously stylized electronic documents. But within BigPicture and Gantt, BigTemplate is responsible for import and export to and from external software such as Microsoft Project, Microsoft Excel. Role extension adds personalized roles to Jira components. Okay, so today I will be presenting the latest version of BigPicture 7.2 server. So there are some minor and few major differences between the server and cloud versions of the product. I will make sure to outline them during this presentation. So this is the first view you will see when you install our product. This is the program manager with a list of previously created programs. There are a couple of view options available, such as the list, the Gantt, the timeline view, which is dynamic, so it will adjust the x-axis to fit all your programs. Other than that, the main view, the tiles view, as you can see, each program has a name, has some additional information about the program, has start and end dates, just as you've seen on the timeline already. However, at this point, those dates do not actually impact any data in Jira. No, they are derived from those issue level dates. Although this will be redesigned in the future versions, and we are currently actually redesigning this program manager. So as you can see here, I created programs with different names. Some of them represent a portfolio, some of them an agile release train, some of them a risk register. The idea here is that a program can actually do all of those. So it can represent a single Jira project, it can be simply a set of tasks, it can be a collection of Jira projects, and we can actually manage different types of Jira projects. We can create a program simulating our portfolio, so we can actually, there are no limits on the number of projects that you can add to the scope of the program. I also have a program called Safe ART, or the Skate Agile Framework Agile Release Train, so I can use this to also successfully simulate such an NRT. But I also have dedicated programs that such as the risk register or traditional approach, which specifically shows how the traditional methods are used compared to a hybrid project, which consists of both phases run one after another, project phases and the development in iterations. So let's start with an overview of different BigPicture modules. If you click the More button, you'll see that there's Gantt, Scope, board, roadmap, resources, teams, risks, reports, and metrics, big picture enterprise module. So I will give you a short overview of each one of those, and I actually have already opened some of my programs in separate tabs. So we start with the Gantt chart, and this is still the most advanced module we currently offer. As you can see, it has a customizable list of tasks and a timeline with those tasks generated in form of taskbars, as well as the resources panel. As you can see, I can actually save different views, select which fields will be displayed as columns on this list. I can also structure my tasks. As you can see, there is the task hierarchy or the work breakdown structure, so I can collapse, extend to the required level of information. I can do this structuring manually or automatically using structure builders. The plugin is very easy and intuitive to use, so using drag and drop I can move the tasks on the timeline, change their duration, generate dependencies between tasks. The gray bar are the parents resulting from the hierarchy, while the other tasks, colored tasks, are simple taskbars. We also have a resources panel that shows our resource utilization in the provided time frame. Works in two modes: original estimate mode and the remaining estimate mode. So once the execution is started, you can rely on remaining estimate of time tracking, which is more accurate. And also the presentation can include the logged work. So other than that, we also have a scope module. So scope module, compared to the Gantt chart, is actually lacking the timeline. So this module, as named scope, can be used to manage your scope more efficiently. And when we talk about working using BigPicture together with Jira, what we're actually doing is, generating live data. So all the data is synchronized in real time, and you will always be sure that you have the latest information available, and hence you can actually create a very detailed view to monitor your data, to actually generate live reports as well. And we can select from the list of numerous fields available in your Jira. So those lists, of course, will vary depending on your custom fields that you add. But I can easily, without the necessity of going to the program configuration, I can add those, change the columns of this list directly using this interface. And as you can see, I can also select different aggregation and data display settings. So those will be different depending on the type of field used, but in general you can usually select option called children by status categories, which is very useful when creating a status-based reports, using status categories to group all the data. And you can actually, with this simple trick, you can actually compare data that is estimated using time tracking fields, time units, as well as in story points, because they all share the same status. And here actually also we do rely on the status categories. So for each parent level, I can actually create such a report and show the distribution of issues in different status categories. There are other options here in this module. In particular, it's very user-friendly. Using drag and drop, you can multi-select, move tasks that were multi-selected, so customize your structure real quick. You can save the views that you create, mark them as favorite. This is per user. The next module would be the Resources module. Resources is an extension to the Gantt chart. It also, we could say, mirrors the task that you see on the Gantt chart. However, you will not be able to see the dependencies between those tasks. They are still effective. They will still impact all the successors that are linked with your task, but the purpose of this view is actually to focus on the resource allocation, okay, to check whether there are over allocation, under allocation problems that needs to be addressed. This module works in two modes, the individual and team mode, so you can actually work not only with individual resources but also assign issues to teams. Okay, so that's another gap that we identify in Jira. Besides that, you can actually customize what you see here on this screen. We will talk more about the numbers, but you can switch to different aggregation, daily, weekly, monthly aggregated data. Also, you can export for further analysis to Excel, and already mentioned skill panel allows you to actually calculate the skill demand for a skill of your resources. Skills are actually determine the skill need at the issue level, as well as the acquired skill by the individual resources, and also once they are added as members to teams, the skill becomes a team skill accordingly. So as you can see here, I do have a problem with the architect. The demand exceeds the supply, and it's both at the team and individual level. So next on our list would be the board module, which is actually a program increment dependency board, or in case of Jira software, it's actually it could be referred to as a master board that collects all the information from different Jira software boards, and you can actually visualize all the cross-team dependency, cross-task dependencies using colored links, color-coded links. We also have a dynamic backlog, side backlog, which actually shows us all the issues that we want to plan in our program increments or in our iterations, or in other words, sprints. It's customizable, so it's also structured, so I can customize which fields will be displayed as columns. I can adjust its size. So the board, so this view actually includes the backlog, the timeline. It also includes the time boxes, which we refer to as the program increments, and you can drill down to iteration levels, as each program increment consists of multiple iterations. Now the task cards are customizable, again using drag and drop. You can do all sorts of operations. You can inline edit those tasks. As I said, you can customize which information is presented. There are also some other useful features which we refer to as totals, which will help you in monitoring the progress, as well as in your planning, showing the planned versus capacity indication. So next would be, or actually the roadmap board, roadmap module should be presented before the board, as it's actually a higher level tool which allows us to set the objectives and goals that we wish to accomplish in the space in the future, in those different time boxes, program increments and iterations. So goals to which our teams commit, and we can actually measure the probable and actual, and then compare it to the actual business value of our objectives, keep track of their status, and as well link the team level objectives with the generic objectives. An example of a smart objective is what you see right now on the screen, so we can manage those using this dedicated module. Also, you can generate instant reports using the roadmap and board module. So I forgot to mention that, sorry, but yeah, in case of the board, the reports are actually more advanced. We can change the not only the type of chart but also data source, including the tasks and already mentioned capacities, and also group our data using different fields. And count using tasks or estimates in story points or of time tracking. Now next would be the themes section. Actually, it's a configuration section rather than a dedicated module, but yes, themes are very important. Consists of team members, and you can actually manage their memberships here, set the availability or how much time of your team member is allocated to each team, and that of course will influence their capacities as in the resources panel of the Gantt module as well as the resources module. You'll see that each team member also has a set of skill which then becomes the team skill set as well. And we also have a risk matrix. Risk matrix is or risk module is a simple yet powerful tool, a decision-making tool which will help you to assess the level of risk. And it consists of two main elements: the customizable risk matrix and a risk register. Customizable, as you can adjust the select options. Here we are using Jira single list fields. You can invert the matrix, adjust it to how it is in your organization. You can actually add, change its dimensions as well, change the descriptions here of the risk probability and risk consequence, which are the default names. Using drag and drop, I can actually move my items around the X and Y axis. Those are again cards which are customizable, so you can change which fields will be presented on those cards. A variety of fields, and similarly on this risk register, you can actually select which fields again will be presented as columns. It's a bit different than the scopes module matrix, because here we can also reassign our risks here. And actually you see on the screen, once we edit, we can reassign, change the risk owner, and you can see that any issue type can be actually presented here. So I have a dedicated program with issue type risks, and you see I created a program representing a risk register, and all my risks are now nicely coded with different colors representing the level of risks. So we can also add risks and programs, and actually a Gantt module, but I see that it has loaded as a gadget to your Cofluence or Jira dashboards, and create a nice overview of your portfolio, for example, with different other gadgets and other information in one place. So let's talk more about different features and different modules in more detail. Starting with our already known program manager. Yeah, so tiles you'll see that each program has a star which you can use to mark them as a favorite. It has an avatar with a progress bar, or actually indication of times passed since the start date of the program. The dates are not that relevant here currently, rather used to organize your programs. We can also filter out the data using available filters such as my programs or created by me. You can filter out your favorite programs only, or programs which were not published yet. You can also filter by status, or you can use the date range filters again to filter out the unwanted information, or you can also use the search box. Okay, also one more important thing, the the closed program status means that the programs will not get synchronized once they are opened. For all the other programs, they will get synchronized when you open the program, and that's when the synchronization is triggered. There are two types of synchronization. One is partial, one is complete. Complete happens when the programs are fresh opened or after 24 hours when the plugins cache is cleared. So let's create our new program, and I click the add new program button. There are different options available. Create new programs, clone existing programs, import data from a file, or evaluate with sample data. So if you starting to use this tool, please keep in mind that some initial training is required. There are some risks that an untrained person can do unintentionally, so keep this in mind. I will tell you how to avoid those risks, but it's always a good idea to create a sample program with sample data and learn how the tool works, understand how the automation works, to avoid such risks in future. So each program has some basic program information, and we are actually at the program configuration level already. So you see that it has the program name, the program leader. Program leader has access to the program configuration by default. It has the start and end date, but right now they are not used by other modules. There are the initial permissions as well as an avatar with a set of icons to select from. Okay, so going back to the main view, there are other options. As I mentioned earlier, we can create new programs from scratch or apply existing programs configuration. We can clone existing programs as well as we can import data from a file. Now, importing data from a file requires BigTemplate, which is also a plugin, but it is sold separately, and its main functionality is to export issue detailed information into previously stylized electronic documents, ready to print, ready to send documents. So different file types are supported, including Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Project. And yeah, other than that, we can clone existing programs. So cloning allows you to, once you have a program, it's configured, it's populated with tasks, you can use this to create a program template, and use those program templates with your future work. This is not cloning like you might understand cloning from Jira. In Jira, the cloning is a very complicated operation, so you have to map all those fields that you have while when creating a program template. We will be using a we do not clone all the fields, rather the essentials required by the app, meaning the dates, the start and end dates, the parent in the work breakdown structure, as well as the dependencies and the summary. So we do not clone all the detailed fields, and as the plugin would not be able to populate them with answers in case of the required. So the most commonly used option is the create new programs from scratch. You can apply the existing programs configuration. Once you have your favorite program configuration, this will simply save you time. Then you will be required to again enter the issue detailed information, the start and end date of your programs. And then as I said, the start and end date at this point do not impact any other modules nor your issues. Currently we are actually redesigning this module, so you'll be able to create programs within programs. Right now those dates do not impose anything on your tasks. They are not derived from your issue dates as well. I mentioned also we have this program avatar with hundreds of icons to select from to organize your program list. The next step would be to define which issues will be synchronized with Jira pulled into the program. In this step, you have three different boxes: the boards, filters, previously saved filters, and project to define the scope. There is an so actually boards are defined using a JQL filter, same as the previously saved filters. Actually, once you create a board, the board filter is saved in Jira, so you can select from the list of previously saved JQL filters. When doing so, make sure that your filter is shared with all the users who would like to access the BigPicture modules, or you can simply select from the list of previously created projects, which can be also expressed using a simple filter, simple JQL project is. So you don't have to select all of those, populate all of those boxes. This means that there is an OR gate between boards, filters, and projects. While there is also so adding items increases the number of issues within the scope. While you can also use the extra filter, which means that there's an AND gate, logical AND gate here, to narrow the scope of your program to a particular issue type only. For example, what's really cool is all the data is synchronized between programs, so that's you'll always have the latest information in each of the programs. So the next step is for configuration. Here it's pretty simple. You can disable or hide actually different BigPicture modules. You can enable them at any time. There's one major difference between the cloud and server. There's actually this board 1.0 which is not available to our cloud users, and in case of server you cannot switch between boards once the program is created. You can, however, create a new program with the same scope and using the previous version of the board, especially that the new board still lacks some integration features with the Gantt chart, but we plan to actually add those missing features by the end of this year. So the next step would be the advanced configuration. So I will not get into more details about the agile schedule, we'll talk about it later, but if you remember, I mentioned one risk of unintentionally rescheduling your program data. Use the manual task mode if you want to do that. Okay, so let's move on to Gantt module. Open one of my programs. Let me find the correct tab. Okay, so this is a hybrid project, as you can see, and this is already structured, so I will show you how to do that. We will actually do a simple use case and create a portfolio out of this program. As you can see right here, I have some structuring phases. I use a special issue type to represent phases, but we also have the development part. So it's kind of a mix, hybrid, waterfall and Scrum. I can collapse my task. Right now you can see that there's only one project and there's also one more task. It's called project group. So this is actually an artificial task. Artificial tasks are not accessible via Jira. You can display them and change the names and start and end dates on the timeline using drag and drop, but you will not be able to access it in Jira. So I also have this presentation mode here. The program, let's maybe talk more about the interface. The program picker with the button go back to the program manager, links to different BigPicture modules as well as the program configuration. So I can add tasks using this interface. Two types of tasks, Jira tasks and artificial tasks. Artificial tasks you've already seen, so I can, using drag and drop, change the start and end dates of these tasks. Those are great as placeholders. You can color them, use to structure manually. For example, those arrows I can use to indent my whole project under this artificial task and aggregate all the data to this artificial level. So I can create as many levels as I want. Actually, this is a great way to group our projects into programs and programs into portfolios. I can use this interface to actually add Jira tasks, Jira issues in general, Jira subtasks, as well as add items directly indented in the structure as well. I can also add artificial tasks, which you see the project group is an artificial task, which I use to group my projects. Okay, so let me disable the resources panel. Right now I can enable the detailed view, and this actually replaces the timeline with the issue detailed view. Let me adjust the task list. Okay, there it goes. So you can edit those tasks directly using this interface. You don't have to do that in a separate window, although to be honest, I prefer to do that using separate tab. So I also like this period key that opens a Jira menu, which can be used to actually edit our tasks or change the status or open the edit dialog. You can also double click on the task and open the edit dialog. Other than that, we have the data view, so you can sort or organize or sort, in other words, your tasks. The sorting criteria, the fields that are available on this list, depend on what you add to your column view. Those can be changed in the program configuration, and right now the sorting criteria depends actually on what fields are visible as columns. Other than that, we can also group our tasks, and this is a very cool feature. Multi-level grouping is possible. Again, the grouping field options depend on which fields are added to your column view. And it's really cool because actually I can not only group my tasks here on the list, the work breakdown structure, the task hierarchy will disappear. But what's really cool is this is a multi-level grouping, so the app will count the number of items in each group. As you can see, I have in my status then 7 issues, and then within that group 6 issues are assigned to Angela, 1 to Jerome. But what's really cool is like we also have a dedicated module to add a visualization layer. In other words, generate charts based on those grouping criteria. And this module is called Reports. It works in 2 different modes. Actually, we have an enterprise version of this module. There are different chart types, multi-level chart types, pie charts, bar charts. If you hover over the element here or click on it, you can drill down into the next group. Yeah, so subgroups, just like on the Gantt chart, we created groups. This standard version of BigPicture offers 5 different charts, while BigPicture Enterprise allows customizing those charts. You can change the formulas, change the group by fields, as well as customize the grid and add your custom charts. Up to five different groups kind of filters are available for each chart, and you can create a very detailed dashboards with a lot of information to visual to display. Okay, yeah, so as you can see, different issue types, a lot of fields. Actually, whatever you see in your Jira should be available here, at least a vast majority of fields. Okay, so let's go back to our Gantt chart, and let me disable the grouping criteria. I don't need that right now. So next, expand collapse all I already covered. Baselines. As you can see, those phantom objects or footprints indicating the position at the moment of creating the baselines can be shown, displayed on the timeline, and it's saved as a separate. It can be saved as a separate field. Next, we have the task mode. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we have the auto features, auto mode features, and as you can see, if I drag and drop a task, the successor and as well as the parent, they're adjusted, they're rescheduled, and that's the risk I mentioned. So to avoid this risk, all you need to do is actually switch to a manual mode. Once in manual mode, task mode manual, those automations are disabled. So now if I drag this task, you will see that the successor was not pulled to the left. Also, the gray bars are now partially yellow. Yellow bar indicates the position after the task, parent task in that case, would be recalculated. There are two strategies. There are two strategies: top down, bottom up, as well as the lock mode. Lock prevents users from moving the task using the interface, while they can still update this task directly via Jira. So what happens when I drag and drop my task, changes duration, for example? This action is synchronized with Jira, so the new position of the task that I'm actually using dates now. Date picker type of fields is updated. You can see this, but maybe let's show you how this actually is synchronized with Jira. So I'll go to the program configuration and the add-ons section or apps in the latest Jira, and by far the task configuration is the most important section here. So here we can decide which fields will be mapped and updated when doing actions using on tasks using our plugin. So you see that we have the start date and end date fields here. We need actually 2 points on the timeline to generate the taskbar, and we can do that. By default, we use standard date picker type of fields, or date time fields are also supported, although we can disable the synchronization. And alternatively, of the two dates, we can actually use time tracking fields, including the original estimate as well as the time spent plus remaining estimate, which we added quite recently. So those are the options for mapping of the dates. Same applies to the baseline, same applies to progress field, which you can update directly using the interface. Yeah, time tracking. I'll be using time tracking progress, but you can, yes, use other fields. Next is the link configuration. So here we can also decide which fields will be, which link types will be synchronized and visualized by different BigPicture modules, mainly Gantt and the board module. 4 types of standard links by default for the Gantt, and one for the new board module. But any type of link in Jira can be displayed. Next is the risk reconfiguration. So here you can customize the description of the field as well as the single choice list field to be used, to be mapped. And resources configuration, very important section. Why? Because here we decide which field will be used to identify team assignment. So 2 types of fields: team single select type of field, no synchronization, or labels. We will talk more about that later. One more thing I did not mention, so actually this task configuration settings is per project, and you can have different mapping of different projects. That's really cool. So you can, some users might prefer the time tracking to estimate the duration, while others prefer date fields. and have these time tracking values independent of the duration. That's when you don't have to work like that's when you want to work on multi tasks simultaneously. Gantt chart. I think we covered the data. Now the view options. So view, you can actually, as we already mentioned, change the and save your column views, change the layout of the task, or use additional features such as the markers to highlight an important event or the current date. This is just click on the timeline. We have the critical path. We already shown you the baselines and the iterations. So actually the iterations show you how your sprints are planned on the timeline. So those purple and green areas show our iterations, and iterations in turn can be mapped to sprints. So very cool feature, however not yet available to Board 2.0 users. Available with the old version of Board. You can still use this feature, but you would be required to have a separate program with the old board running if you plan to use the new version of the board. The feature works such that once issue is planned in a sprint, it will also update the start and end dates of this issue to align with the sprint's start and end date. Okay, so other than that, we have the color by status, so you can use the status colors to color code your tasks. We can export issues into different file types and images. Microsoft Project, Microsoft Excel. We have a quick filter set of JQL queries that you can use as your quick filters and mark them as favorite, so they'll be added to the program's header. Very useful. And further filters by date range filters, very useful when you want to export to an image and you don't want to export this blank area. There's also a search box that works with a text search as well as a JQL, so fully functional JQL filter that you can use ad hoc and filter out the unwanted information. Okay, so next is the scope module. So as you can, let me disable the filters. So as you can see here, it's actually a list of tasks compared to the Gantt module. It's lacking the timeline, but it actually has other very useful features. So one of those is that I don't need to go to the program configuration to change the way that data is displayed nor how it is aggregated. I can do this directly using this interface. Very cool features, so I can easily adjust this to extract the information I want. For example, status-based progress using the children status categories in percentage points for at each parent level from the structure. Resulting from the structure, you will see such an aggregation, and this is calculated by the browser, so you won't be able to have this information in Jira. Using drag and drop, I can structure my tasks here just like on the Gantt, with the exception that here I can actually select multiple tasks, so multi-select is possible. And when I open the task in the new window, you will see that we also have the widget, two actually widgets in this view. You can disable them in the global configuration. An extract of the issue list, also customizable. Extract of the structure, work breakdown structure, as well as the skill. So let's go to the program configuration, and I'll show you how to actually change the scope. I add some additional 2 projects, and you will see how easy it is to create actually a portfolio overview, my small portfolio consisting of those 3 different Jira projects. Let's open the scope module, the Gantt or the scope module, and you will see that already the number of issues, the structure is a bit different. If I collapse here, you'll see that I have two additional entries representing 2 other projects, and I can, using those arrows or drag and drop, indent manually. This operation has to be done manually. Indent under the artificial tasks and aggregate all the data from all three projects. So a nice overview of all those three projects in a single view with the resource utilization in this panel. Next thing I would like to show you here real quick is that if you go to the general section and synchronization, you can actually decide which information will be shown on your task list. This includes versions, components, projects, sprints, backlog, and whenever it is possible, we can actually synchronize this information with Jira. So not all of those, for example, versions do have dates, but projects not necessarily have dates, maybe some system dates that are not available, same as sprint, same as backlog and components don't have dates in Jira. But you can, once those checkboxes are checked, an issue, a task representing versions, component, projects, sprints, and backlog will be presented on our issue list. Now, the next step, once you decide which information is available, I'll be using projects here because I want to create a simple structure, is to decide how to build this structure. And you can do this manually, as I shown you previously, or automatically using those inbuilt structure builders or link-based structure builders. So you can create a structure based on a link or use those inbuilt builders available. So I'm creating a simple project structure, project version subtasks. That's what I already achieved as they were enabled. This is, but you can also use dependency links, and any link, unless it is mapped already in the link configuration, should be available here. And please know that when creating such a structure, if there is an issue, if one of the links in the link configuration is used between tasks and you create a parent-child relationship using those structure builders, those links will be removed, because in other words they will create a conflict, infinite loop, as tasks will keep updating each other. Also, please note that some structure builders will conflict with each other, because, for example, sprints are just like boards, can be cross-project, and they will not nest under the projects. Same as you will not be able to create a level automatically above the project level, as project is the highest level object in Jira. So also the order is important here. And this is actually the most complicated part of our plugin. So due to the restrictions in Jira and how Jira is designed, but it's a very advanced way to actually create complex structure and save a lot of time. Okay, so let's go back to our next module. I think we covered the scope. Yes, we can save all those previews here. Let's go next to the resource module. Resources actually consists of two, as I said, two main elements. It's an extension of the Gantt chart, so you have the list of your resources. In that case, it's human resources, unless you use dummy accounts to dummy Jira accounts to actually simulate your non-human resources. So we have the skill panel here, which shows our skill demand versus skill supply. So the list of skills instead of resources here, and we have those two sections that we can use to identify conflicts and over allocation or under allocation problems. So next is the team button, so you can switch between individual and team-centric view. When assigning a task to teams, the team ID field will be updated. And teams consist of team members, so the capacity of the team is the sum of all the capacities of individual members. And you see also that we have the list of skills available in that team. Next would be the effort mode, 3 different effort modes: original estimate, remaining estimate, and story points. So if you click on the task, you see that I don't have any logged work here, although I have the remaining and original estimate set to 2 weeks. The actually the remaining estimate effort mode is more advanced than the original estimate, which can be simply used instead. We can also switch to convert time units into story points and display the allocation the capacities as story points. Other than that, let me hide the skill panel here. Explain what the numbers are. In the white box you see the capacity, then you have the remaining capacity as well as allocation. So I will explain how it is calculated in a minute, but you also see the color-coded resource utilization indicator. When I drag and drop my tasks here, you'll see that the colors change here. Actually, let me maybe reassign it. Using drag and drop, I can easily reassign this, and what you'll see is that the effort required to complete this task is evenly distributed over the duration period. So if so I cannot auto level my tasks. If I click on it, you have the find best match. This will take into account the resources availability as well as the available skill. If you click on the allocation, one of the values or the capacity, you will see how those different tasks contribute to this value here. Also, so the question is, what is the information required? What information is required to use this module? And I will go to the big picture program administration now to talk more about the resources. So here you have the resource manager view. If you click on the resource, you will see a detailed view with skills, workload plans, and holiday plans. Each of those items have actually a start and end date, so you can plan your skill development over time. You can assign your resource to multiple workload plans, holiday plans, and absence plans. So the capacity is derived from the workload plans and then reduced by holiday plans and absence plans. And again, those have the start and end date that you can plan your unavailability. So an example of a workload plan is as follows. You set how many hours the resource is available on any given day. Setting 0 means it's equivalent of an non-working day. Holiday plans show us the calendars with non-working days. With one exception, you can actually make an extra working day out of a non-working day. So they reduce the capacity. You have the skill and you can define the list of skills here. And by the way, this is all of those items, including the resource manager, the global teams, the workload plans, holiday plans, and skills can be synchronized with Tempo if you have BigPicture Enterprise extension to BigPicture. This feature, however, is not available to Jira Cloud users yet. Yeah, so enterprise feature synchronization with with Tempo apps. Tempo has a couple of different apps. Very popular plugin on the Atlassian's marketplace. Okay, so we also have the teams I mentioned before. So there are two types of teams: program level teams and global, which you'll see right now. Each team consists of team members, and you can set the availability of your team members or how much of its time is spent for within a given team. This also affects the individual allocation, and we also have the risk card configuration section where you can customize which fields will be visible on the risk card. Applies to risks, and there in the program configuration you can also change that for the board cards. Okay, so let's go back to our resources module. As you can see here, you have a box with additional filters. You can filter out the different teams. And let me check here the effort mode. Yeah, so we have a task with a 2-week original estimate, and as you can see, remaining estimate is also set to 2 weeks, and as you can see, the task evenly distributes those 2 weeks, or in other words, 80 hours into 5 days. So if I shorten this task, it's all 80 hours, all 2 weeks, just as it is set in my Jira, distributed evenly. And if I stretch this task, then I can actually level the resource utilization. And here what you'll be doing is actually looking at the tool will help you identify the conflicts, over allocation conflicts. You'll be comparing the individual view with the team's view, and also look at the data and from different perspective. Besides looking at it from different perspective, you can also adjust the aggregations, and here see how the resources utilized on any given day, or daily, weekly, and monthly aggregations are possible. So if you zoom out, you change the scale, you'll be operating with the bigger aggregation, such as the monthly, and you'll see that whether in the individual team view, the capacities change. There's also one enterprise feature, shows all the tasks across from all programs. So if you have this BigPicture Enterprise, you can show all the tasks. They will be transparent. You will not be able to edit them. Those are the tasks assigned to which the resource is assigned, but do not exist in this program, are not part of this program. We also have a very useful feature referred to as warnings, which adds this red frame on top around the modules that, for example, are missing some relevant data. In that case, is the original estimate, or maybe there are some problems related to the assignment of the task. The individual assignee can be assigned to a team of which he is not a member of. So such warnings can be identified by the plugin, and you can easily, with a click, resolve them. Okay, let's open the next module, and okay, so let's switch to the next module, and let me disable the reports option first. So this is actually one of the boards that uses the concept of an agile schedule. So you see our teams, you'll see that some entries, those are actually my objectives. So here I can set my objectives, goals and objectives at the generic level or at the team level, at both program increment and iteration levels of this board. And I can set the probable business value and actual business value when I actually have the data. So probable business value you can set whenever in any of those, no, actually in the forecast and in progress statuses, we can actually keep track of our objectives. So I can count them by status or count them by the business value, and I can keep track of my objectives. I can add, so change the status. I can double click on the objective to bulk change if it exists in more than one time box simultaneously. There are two types of objectives. I can add the artificial objectives that will not be available in Jira. You will not be able to actually view them in Jira. But we also have Jira based. You can also display Jira issues here actually, and this is an example of my smart objective, which I can add those issues which I created a different issue type. In my case, do not get synchronized with Jira. So unlike the board module, unlike the resources, unlike the Gantt scope modules, you will not be able to update the data here. That at least currently the status, you can only display them. The status is stored and it's managed by our app. So this module, as well as the board module, can be used by non-agile teams as well. Whenever you want to set your objectives, it's a really nice tool. You simply rename the agile schedule entries, the PIs into what the years or the iterations into months or quarters. So we also have this board module with a dynamic backlog, as you can see here, the hierarchy of your tasks, just like in the other modules, so you can structure them automatically or manually. We have the board with our program increments again, just like in case of the roadmap. Let me adjust the backlog here, actually hide it. So this is a program increment dependency board. It shows you all the issues in forms of cards and dependencies between them. They are color coded. I can adjust the backlog just like I adjusted my scope modules, my Gantt modules. I can add the relevant fields here. In my case, we have the WSJF, which is the way shortest job first. So this is how we do it here in Software Plant. Our program management from the backlog selects features for development, and using drag and drop we can add them. We have the unassigned row, we have the team swim lanes, and each team with all the cards, all the features that they'll be working on. And this is how we also do it here when during the PI plannings. First we select from the list of features, then the features are broken down by teams during the team breakout sessions into stories, and then the teams plan their iterations, and iterations can be mapped to sprints. So here, of course, when we refer to planning, capacity is very important. By the way, those are inline editable fields, so I can update the estimates using this interface. And when planning my iterations, I'm really interested in the capacity versus the number of story points planned that the team will commit. So let me update here the story point. Let me correct this. Change the totals to change it to capacity planning. So we can use the totals, the progress bars that you see here, for two purposes. One would be the progress tracking, and the other one is the planning. So as you can see, I do have warnings. I to pay extra attention to those time boxes. So what are the time boxes? And I said earlier, they can be configured using the agile schedule. So my agile schedule consists of program increments, which then in turn consists of iterations. As I said earlier, non-agile teams can simply rename iterations into months or quarters, and program increments into years, and also use those two boards. Okay, so as for the board, I said that you can customize the cards, but there's also a dedicated section for the synchronization. So the board can actually, as I said, you can auto configure it, and both the program increments, time boxes, as well as the iterations can be mapped to single list type of fields, to text fields, or to sprints. And there are three modes: team specific mode, the shared mode, and non-synchronization. So we don't have to synchronize this. And once it is synchronized, doing operations on our tasks, placing them in different iterations, will also update the mapped field that you configure here. So let's go back to the board. So we know which fields will be updated, synchronized now, the capacity planning. So although those values here expressed in story points or man days are actually derived from your workload plans and converted to story points, you can override them here, both at the individual level or at the team level. When you override the capacity at the individual level, the team capacity will be actually updated automatically. So kind of works like an so you can override at both levels, but of course you can calculate it bottom up. When you update those, you can highlight the changes. Very useful feature as well to keep track of what was modified in this view. Let's go back to our board one more time. And there are some other useful options, such as already mentioned totals, work in different units. You can switch to compact mode, squeeze more tasks into this view. You can open the reports or live reports, generate live reports. Different chart types are chart types are available. Different data sources, the tasks or the capacities, and just like using the Gantt or reports module, you can group your data by the available fields here. Yeah, this reporting at the program increment level is actually a BigPicture enterprise feature. And the last module would be the okay, so the last module is the risks here with a customizable matrix. You can change the description, change the select options. This is using the single list type of field. Using drag and drop, you can navigate through the X and Y axis, change the risk probability or risk consequence. Those are inline editable fields, some of them, the text fields as well as number fields. And you can add existing risks from the scope of the project or create new that will be added to the project and to this list. The requirement here for your issues to appear is to have the risk probability, risk consequence, or any other fields that you wish to use to show this matrix, maybe not the risk but opportunities. You need to set values for those fields. Other than that, the plugin will not know where to place it on the matrix, and the issue will not be added to the register as well. So you can also convert or switch to the compact mode, squeeze in more cards, hide the matrix, hide the table, transpose the matrix to fit it to your organizational matrix or risk schemes. And sort by the fields added to your issue card. You can export to images or to Microsoft Excel, and export the list. So enable the heat map mode to color code your cards and show the calculated risk level. So you can add the fields here, but just like in other modules, but the difference is that you can click on the header to sort by those fields. So another useful feature. And I think we covered the majority here, so it's time for us for the Q&A session. Feel free to ask questions, use the chat box, or join our discussion. Thank you for your attention, and feel free to contact us, support@softwareplan.com.